Hello, and welcome to Produce Talks, the CPMA podcast. I am your host and CPMA Education Manager, Jason Gorley. Before we get started, I just want you to take a second and go to elearning.cpma.ca, that's elearning.cpma.ca, and check out our Produce Credentialing program that we've launched. Last year we started with Produce Basics, which is the first stage, and now we've started to launch Stage 2, which is Produce Essentials. So you'll see that the modules will become available over the next few months, but you can register now, and you can already access the first module, followed closely by the second module, and then one each month for the next few months until they're all completely launched and ready and available for you to take. That's elearning.cpma.ca. Before we get to the podcast, let's check in with Selena, who's here to tell us who this month's Fresh Health Award winner is. Hi, Selena.
Hey, Jason. I'm so excited to be here and telling you guys about the November Fresh Health Award. This month's winner is Canadawide Fruit Wholesalers. Canadawide has put the Half Your Plate logo on the homepage of their website, and they've also incorporated it into their email signatures. And this is a really simple and great way to spread the Half Your Plate message that's not too difficult, so you guys should all give it a try. Congratulations, Canadawide, and their website is CanadaWideFruits.com. If you'd like to nominate a company for the Fresh Health Award, you can just email me at skarkash@cpma.ca. Thanks, Jason.
All right, on this month's podcast, we have part one of a conversation on ethnic and exotic produce. We have a panel of experts here to tell us all about it. We have George Pitsikoulis, who is with Canadawide Fruit Wholesalers in Montreal. We have Michael Baird, who is with Loblaw Companies. And we have Davis Young, who is with Fresh Direct Produce out of Vancouver and Calgary. In the first part of the conversation, we'll see a little bit about why this trend is emerging, why it's becoming such a big deal in Canadian grocery stores and food service establishments. I don't want to keep you from the conversation any longer. Let's get started. Here are...
I'm George Pitsikoulis of Canadawide Fruit Wholesalers, based here in Montreal. It's a family-owned operation. I'm the president of the company. I'm involved in basically all aspects of what we do, but I still touch on a lot to do with marketing, and I actually purchase some items still to this day myself. We import product from wherever it makes sense all over the world, and we sell locally. We're a full-line distributor of anything that is a fresh fruit or fresh vegetable, and our customers are mainly here in Canada. We do some export into the States, but from Canada we will go as far as Toronto westwards. We're very strong into Eastern Ontario, throughout Quebec, and into the Maritimes.
My name is Michael Baird. I work with Loblaw Companies Limited as Senior Category Manager on the ethnic commodities, as well as I've taken over recently beans and herbs for procuring nationally across Canada for 6 distribution centers and various banners within the Loblaw portfolio. I've worked my way up in the company, started working in QA, worked through supply chain, and then into the BU for procurement. Latest challenge for the last 2.5 years has been on the ethnic desk and procuring exotic product from all over the world, importing from various countries, and designing a program across the country for ethnic presence in our mainstream banners to compete with the changing demographic in Canada.
Hi, I'm Davis Young. I'm the president and co-founder of Fresh Direct Produce, a Vancouver-based company with operations in Vancouver and Calgary. We bring in products from over 30 countries, carry about 1,000 SKUs right now, organics and conventional. My passion has been in the purchases and imports and bringing product from all over the world. I've been involved in produce for 24 years, coming up 25. Very excited about the development in the produce industry, especially the availability and accessibility of all kinds of fruits and vegetables around the world. So I'm excited to be here with you guys today.
I think that's a good place to start, because it certainly seems like there's a different assortment that's in kind of a typical produce department in comparison to 10 or 15 years ago. Not only that, but there seems to be a larger share for items that are becoming more and more commonplace. I'm thinking specifically mangoes. Michael, would you say that's a reasonable observation, and how do you see it changing from your perspective?
I would definitely say that has been at the forefront of the changing produce department assortment speaking. Mangoes, we see Probably a 50% increase in the assortment of mangoes from all over the world, countries like Thailand and Vietnam and China, and not so much the conventional programs from Mexico and the U.S. or Peru, but we're expanding to much more air-flown product from all these regions that we probably wouldn't have reached, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I agree with Michael. I mean, mangoes is a great example just to see the differences of, where the market was like 10, 15 years ago versus today. Winter time, usually we only see mangoes from Brazil or Ecuador or Peru. But right now we got air-flown in mangoes from Australia, the big R2U2 beautiful product. Retail could be $9 to $10 each. And then the mangoes from Philippines, we just got a shipment in that's over $100. You wonder where would people, consider buying mangoes in the wintertime and paying $10 a piece, but just the changing demographics in the market. But at the same time, in the summertime, now you see mangoes from India, from Pakistan, from Colombia, from places that we would not think that people will consider bringing products in just because, we'll probably touch upon more with now immigration, with people traveling more. Just people are asking for products from where they are from, and we see there's a demand for that, and then of course, with importers and people in business, that we are now able with the logistics, bringing product pretty much from anywhere in the world.
Absolutely. I mean, to begin with, just to finish up on what Davis and Michael were saying, I mean, all these different other countries that we're importing from now, it's just amazing what people are willing to pay and how much money they're willing to invest for product that air-flown in, that's a lot sweeter, more fragrant, more ready to eat. We have a large Israeli program, which I think is also strong in Ontario, Michael, I believe.
Yes.
Of this Maya mango, and then people are just tuned into that product and looking for the best available of whatever time of year it is. One of the things that's changed within the mango categories, I remember back in the early 70s here in Montreal when Haitian mangoes first started coming in by container, and prior to us being wholesalers, we were retailers back in the 60s and 70s, and I remember back then that was the big mango, the Francine, and then Mexico came along and Brazil, and they sort of displaced the interest in Haitian, but that's made a comeback in itself, the Haitian Francine variety mango. And getting back to Mexican mangoes, we're finding that even within that, where a Tolfo mango, which is a mango that we used to source and continue to source from Mexico, made up a small percentage of the sales. Now it's through that Mexican mango season and makes up 2/3 of the sales. But beyond that, there's even more items that have become more popular because of, let's say, the influx of different groups from different countries, people visiting on vacation different countries, the food shows, things like, for example, jumbo papayas. That used to be a niche product where we would have trouble getting through a pallet a week. Now it's container loads, and it goes on from there. It goes on to items like young coconuts, pomelos. Now things like even basic items like figs used to be a smaller item, and that's become a lot more popular. And again, we feel it's because of the migration that we've had in recent years more than anything else.
So that's a bit about how you think it's changing. So you mentioned the foodie TV shows highlighting new tastes, but really one of the main drivers is immigration to Canada. We're going to be welcoming 300,000 new people each year over the next 10 years, and that's really what's going to drive the population increase in Canada, much more than the number of births. This is the first time this has happened in Canada in a long time. So that's a bit about how it's changing what you're seeing in the marketplace. What about how it's influencing other customer tastes as well, George? Maybe you could touch on that. You've already touched a bit about how it's changing what product is being sold and brought in, but I'm thinking specifically in smaller locations. I grew up in PEI, so if you have 200 or 300 people that came from another country that are looking for produce that they're used to, does it affect the change of the taste of the rest of the customers as well?
It does. It eventually catches up in the more remote areas. I remember not that many years ago, 5-7 years ago, being out in the Maritimes. I believe it was in Moncton, where we had to do sort of an in-depth explanation in terms of how to offer and handle avocados of all items. I mean, it was still almost a niche item over there. I mean, it definitely didn't go through the huge increase that it went through in the rest of the major urban centers and whatnot. Another offbeat item, maybe this is too offbeat an item, but things like raw almonds that are green off the tree that the Arab community consumes. It's something that's part of their culture, where they have some in a plate that they salt and drink with one of their drinks. Well, one of our remote customers up in Lac Saint-Jean, you know how far that is, the end of summer, early fall, went through a load of these things, and my understanding is there's several Arab communities up in those remote areas. It gets there too.
Davis, I'm wondering if you have a different perspective. I mean, you have operations in Vancouver and Calgary, and you kind of serve that corridor. So how do you see consumer taste changing in those markets?
It's funny, within each market, there are a lot of pockets of interest of different products. So in Calgary, we see a lot of growth in the South Asians or people from Middle East. And so products that cater to that market, all of a sudden the demand goes up, whether it's okra or some specialty eggplant or fava beans or product that maybe used to be only, a pallet a week, now could be, half a load a week or more. So we see is the demand created a lot more supplies in some way, because now everyone is looking into how can we service this market or customers properly. And then in BC and in Vancouver, I mean, we do have a lot of South Asians or people from Middle East, but then on the Southeast Asians and the Chinese migration is still more prominent. So we then see products that are catered more to the Vietnamese market or Koreans or Malaysia or Chinese, that from the items that George mentioned earlier, that we see big growth, like in pomelos or different kinds of pears, not just the traditional violets or balls or angel, but from Korea or from China, the single pears, the fragrant pears, the yellow skin Asian pears versus the brown. There are different varieties within each. Now I'm just looking at our list, and there are probably about 40 items just on the pears. You look at the produce department, like how many can they carry? So with that, and you go to a specific market, like I go to a Korean store, they could be selling by case, and they could be moving a load of pears in a couple of weeks by one store. So this is something that I would never imagine. The market is seeing so much even on persimmons, that usually the window is California, and then we do a little bit of maybe Brazil or Chilean or New Zealand. But now with the Korean populations growing here, you can probably see, maybe 20, 30 containers of Korean persimmons coming in between November, December, or a little bit in January. So there are a lot of kind of subtle changes, but they're coming fast. And if we in the business, whether a grower, importer, or wholesalers or retailers, if we're not aware of it, and you look back, and it could be the mango market. And so I think it's exciting for us, but at the same time, I think there are way more opportunities now than I would say 10, 15 years ago. Just you talk on the numbers, 300,000 people coming in every year. It may be about 250,000 for the last 10. It's a big number. It's, a few $1 million, 3 million people just within the last decade.
All right, and we do have to pause the conversation for a quick break to hear from our sponsor, Nature Fresh Farms. But stay tuned, because on the other side, we'll be talking more about ethnic and exotic produce and how it's changing in the Canadian marketplace. On the line, we have Chris from Nature Fresh, and he's here to tell us all about how they stay in touch with their customers even after their greenhouse education center is wrapped up for the season. So, Chris, what do you guys do in the off-season?
Well, the off-season is an interesting position for Nature Fresh. Nature Fresh is a vertically integrated grower based in Leamington, family-run operation that has been taking the industry by storm over the last couple of years with our Greenhouse Education Center. We just wrapped up roughly 10 days ago at the Royal Winter Fair in Toronto, where we had our mobile Greenhouse Education Center on site, and actually completed the tour for the year, approximately 106 event days over the course of 2016. So you can imagine we talked to a significant amount of people about how greenhouse produce is grown, specifically here in Ontario. Throughout the Royal Winter Fair, we saw between 400 and 500 people a day. We also participated in the Loblaw Amazing Food Journey, getting very granular in regards to how plants are grown and so forth. So we're one of the stations in the Loblaw area, and we were talking to consumers, really, do you know where your product comes from? It's kind of bittersweet that after 106 days, we parked the trailer for the year, and we start thinking, okay, well, what happens next? Where do consumers go? How do you keep them engaged in the month of November, December through March, when it's cold and snowy and there's not much sunlight? For Nature Fresh, we're overly active using social media as our primary conduit. We want to keep people engaged during those winter months, so we're constantly creating content that's relevant for consumers. We developed a variety of assets that both teachers and parents alike can use with their kids. Shareable content that talks about the value of greenhouse vegetables, also talks about the health benefits, but also how to pair them together. We created some health snacking cards we distributed at the Royal. You can download those directly from our website about how do you combine a tomato with cheese or quinoa or whatever else it may be. but it's more so as keeping content and topics that are relevant for parents to engage with. Typically in the middle of the winter, you don't normally get tomatoes that are grown north of the border, so we want to make sure that we stay top of mind from a healthy eating standpoint, but at the same time sharing how we grow in our greenhouse. Typically we do grow year round, but we only pick, pack, and ship 10 months of the year. So as we've ramped down our operations here in Leamington, we're cleaning out. New baby plants are due to arrive in about 3 to 4 weeks' time. There's still a storyline to connect with consumers, how we use different types of energy to power our greenhouse. An example would be how we use biomass as a main heating source. We actually use 500 tons of waste wood a week to heat our greenhouses. And the byproduct of that is the CO2, and we capture that CO2 and pump back in the greenhouse. The 500 tons of waste wood that gets shredded up into a mulch and fed into the entire efficiency boilers. The sustainability is part of the conversation that people are actively interested in. When we witnessed this past year where customers are asking the bigger question, well, how do you grow? You talk about you growing in recycled coconut husks. What does that mean? How do you heat your greenhouse? What do you do with your water? So even though consumers are buying the tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers grown in Ontario on a regular basis, we're finding more and more as we travel to Loblaw stores across the province that they're asking more specific questions. So we have a variety, I think we have 10 or 12 information points on the trailer that really spark some interesting conversations. It really, in that aspect, keeps us top of mind and keeps consumers asking for more questions. You know, we've seen a huge spike in our web traffic. We've seen a huge spike, in our social connections. We're going to crest, hopefully around 70,000 fans on Facebook come the end of 2016. And we are publishing content on a daily basis that is relevant to those consumers. We're using all these various social media channels to be top of mind. We're also creating videos so that people can understand where their product is growing, how it's grown. To sum up your question, we're employing many tactics to keep Nature Fresh top of mind, keeping Ontario-grown product top of mind, even when there's 3 feet of snow outside, that they can still learn about how their produce is grown. So when it comes into season at your local Loblaw store in March and in April, so that you know who the grower is, where it's coming from, and how it's grown.
Great. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Now, let's get back to the conversation about ethnic and exotic produce. The retail landscape is changing. So you have those smaller stores that are catering to niche markets. But, Michael, from a retail perspective, I know that Loblaw also has like a chain T&T under this banner, under the Loblaw banner. So is this an area of growth, or is the opportunity to grow within the existing banners?
Well, I would say yes. There's a huge opportunity of growth for T&T banner, but more than that, Loblaw banners in themselves have launched a program nationally with prepackaged items as well as an assortment of imported Caribbean items, South Asian items, East Asian items, all at the forefront to offer that to maybe not necessarily the first generation shopper that are in the T&Ts, but we are looking for that current second maybe generation consumer, that we can show that we have these assortment of items that they're looking for in our stores today. I mean, I think about, I worked with Davis actually to launch a program in the West for several, probably about 35 items that multicultural consumers are looking for today. We launched that in Calgary and BC probably about a year ago now. But yeah, it's definitely changing, and the growth opportunity is huge. I mean, we've invested in retail, put a second shelf in the stores for this assortment. You know, our sales are showing it. Our offering is there to consumers, and they're responding well to it.
So a lot of product needs to be imported. I'm sure there's some elements of the supply chain that are looking for... there's been some novelty examples. For instance, bananas in Southern Ontario was a big thing this summer in the hoop houses. But in terms of real opportunity for growers to take a real bite out of this market, is it there?
We're seeing more and more local growers getting involved in growing these ethnic items. I mean, all the different oriental veg that you mentioned before, all the different types of Latin items, like even tomatillo production I've heard of around here. Another good example is an item that initially I only saw in Greece, something that the Greeks call vlita, the Haitians call kalalou. It goes by several different names. It's like a spinach-looking type of green vegetable, which it's unbelievable during the local program how much of that we go through, and it's to French-Canadian growers that actually grow that particular product. But besides an item like that, I know of a number of Mexican growers over here that originally came up as harvesters and eventually branched off on their own and started growing some of the items that is for the Hispanic trade, and they've taken off as well. So are there opportunities? Absolutely. The banana one or some of these items may be a little far-fetched, but there's a lot that do make sense. Okra, another item that you had mentioned, there's local production of that during the summer months. It's not quite there yet in terms of the quality of what we receive from elsewhere, but there's more and more, at least attempts and development of those kind of items here.
Yeah, definitely we are seeing more kind of the specialty type of vegetables being grown here. So okra is an example, and then also Chinese eggplant. Some of the vegetables, even they are growing in a greenhouse. I think Winston Farms have experimented with the Shanghai bok choy growing in a greenhouse, and it's a beautiful product. The only challenge with that is just the timing of the availability and the cost. So definitely there's things that we need to figure out how to get the scale up and, extend the season as long as possible from a local perspective. But I see it spans beyond just, local within Canada. We have a lot of members from, the U.S. and what I really see is a lot of the growers in the States have really caught on the items that in high demand in certain times of the year, which may not be readily available from overseas or offshore. So Korean melon is an example, or Hemi melons. And those items are not available even maybe 12, 15 years ago. But because of the demand and because of demographic shift that we saw here in Canada, now we got some big growers getting into those categories, and the volume is doubling every year. So this is kind of exponential growth for the past 5 years. And I see the items coming up like that. So that would definitely, make it more interesting in terms of when supplies are more readily available. Retailers are going to carry them more often. The education part go beyond just people who are familiar with the product, but just in the general market that people are now really getting a taste of this different products available year-round.
So, Michael, maybe I'll turn to you for a second then. Are you finding that sourcing product is becoming more common within North America, or are you still having to go overseas most of the time?
I would say still probably, 75, 80% of the time it's overseas or import, not necessarily overseas, but U.S. or Mexico or South America. But what I wanted to let you know that Loblaw has been doing and working on over the past number of years is we hold local grower meetings across the country for our local growers. And we've been asking them year after year for the past maybe 5, 7 years to look at embracing some of these trends, some of these changing trends in our produce department and some of these multicultural items, and look at a couple of the more relevant ones with volume in terms of a return for them. And okra and eggplant come to mind. We have 3 new growers that launched this year locally that trialed eggplant and okra. And George is right. Okra is not quite there right yet. This past summer was very hot. They had some challenges, but eggplant has turned out very well. We have probably 4 good local growers that we would not have probably had 7 years ago. And we're building on that year after year, and more growers that seem to be embracing to change crops and to try to grow for the future trends.
One thing I'd like to turn to is let's talk about that first time when you're bringing a new product in. Something that hasn't been introduced before that you want to get into a retail or food service stream. How complicated is it to bring something in that's never been tried before?
Well, I remember years ago, we tried to import durian from Thailand by air. For those who are not familiar with durian, and they have very strong smell. Either you love it or you hate it. I'm not a big fan of it. But so what happened is the product nowadays, the airline has made a policy. You have to completely seal the container. But back, 15, 20 years ago, you don't have to. And on one particular shipment, I think the product was pretty ripe. The smell is quite strong, and they thought there was a chemical leaking or some gas problem. And they had to evacuate the plane, and then eventually they found out it was the durian. So I think since then, now certain airlines will not carry that product, and only one airline, from what I heard, is still doing it, and that they have to be completely sealed. So now, just to give an idea, to bring in a product from overseas, there's so many things, but that is kind of extreme example. But, really get people to remember, got to do all the homework from, really the product characteristics, the basic for safety requirement. Nowadays is really going through a really detailed process to confirm, vendors offshore, they do abide by everything that with Canadian import requirements, pesticides, residue allowance, and to the point even about the labeling and packaging, because for many shippers, if they are not familiar with the Canadian market, they don't necessarily understand the importance of having the proper, country of origin, the weight or the size, or the count size, the exact gross weight and net weight that we needed because of the requirement we need, especially on a packaged product that gets more complicated. Then we need to make sure it's bilingual with French and English, and then the size of the font and a lot of details that people may not pay attention or think is important, but it is important for our market here and for the requirements. And then on top of that, then now really it's about the marketing part of education and really the difference. Popular, say in Korea may not be the case here because a lot of time if you bring in product by air, it's not too much a problem. It's usually like for fruit, it's already tree ripened or they have a good taste profile. But if you're shipping by vessels or by boat, it's going to be a 2 to 3 weeks transit time. So generally the challenge is you got product that is picked a little bit immature because they want to make sure it make the rye. And then upon arrival, then a lot of time it could be a slight disappointment because, hey, this is not the same product that I tried when I was back there. I think this is one of the biggest challenges that we see for a lot of this kind of newer product. Even like the first item that came to mind is the dragon fruit. You could have really, really tasty dragon fruit when you are eating it in Vietnam or in Thailand and Taiwan, but the transit time could be 3 weeks. So far we have not, or the shipper has not figured out a way to package in a modified, maybe atmospheric condition that the product could be a little bit riper, that come in still with good condition and still have the shelf life that had the flavor of what people expected. So I think that, is a long answer, but I really saw the opportunities for much better improvement on this pre- and post-harvesting and packaging to allow us to get even more and more flavorful product for the consumers here in Canada.
All right, and that's it for part 1 of the conversation. We'll be back with part 2 in January with George, Davis, and Michael. I'd like to thank them for joining us today. Their expertise is greatly appreciated, and I know it brought a lot of information my way, and I learned a lot about the topic. I'd also like to thank Chris from Nature Fresh Farms and Nature Fresh Farms themselves for being so supportive of the podcast and coming on and telling us a little bit about what they're doing. And thank you, Selena, for coming on to let us know that Canadawide Fruits, George's company, is this month's Fresh Health Award winner. We do want to hear from you, our listeners, so you can get a hold of us by emailing podcast@cpma.ca. That's podcast@cpma.ca. And that's about it. So, until next time, make a healthy choice. Fill half your plate with fruit and veggies.
You will now be disconnected by the moderator.